You're listening to the I'm Busy Being Awesome podcast with Paula Engebretson, episode number 253. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. How are you? How are you doing? Today, I am going to share a topic with you that I've been thinking about a lot. I've been playing around with a lot, and I'm decided intentionally not to write everything out. I tend to script out my podcasts just because that's what feels most supportive for my brain generally. It helps me stay on track. It helps me ensure that I'm covering all the points that I want to talk about on the different episodes. But today I feel drawn to just sharing what's on my mind. I do have an outline that I have written out. If you're on YouTube, you can see right here. I'm going to refer to it to keep me on track, but I am trying something new today. So let's see how that goes. Here's to being a little uncomfortable. And that is actually in line with what we're looking at today, which was not planned because I don't have this scripted. So basically, what we are talking about today is this concept that I'm sure you've heard people talk about in different ways, which is basically being uncomfortable in the moment for the short term so that you can have greater long-term reward. Being uncomfortable in the moment for long-term reward. A phrase that's often said is short-term pain, long-term gain. I don't really love that one, but you may have heard people say that. Essentially, what we're going to look at today is when is it worth being uncomfortable in the moment so that you can create whatever it is that you want in your life on the other side. When is it worth being uncomfortable? When is it worth leaning in and doing the hard thing? Now, I am often talking about how important it is for those of us in the Busy Awesome community, especially to be looking for ways we can make things easier. One of my favorite questions to ask is, what would easy look like? I am always talking about looking for ways to simplify, to lighten the load, to make things easy. So for me to be offering, when is it worth it to let it be hard, might feel a little bit strange, right? Might feel a little bit out of context. But I think this is a situation that is a both and, because there are absolutely so many times when we want to be asking, what would easy look like? How can I simplify this? How can I make this easier? Because again, as high achievers, as goal getters, as many of us undiagnosed with ADHD for the majority of our lives, and we've had to work 10 times as hard as everyone else just to be able to keep up, I think it is really important for us to practice leaning in to simplifying and letting things be easy and finding workarounds so that we don't have to struggle so much. But also, there are times when it's worth it, when we want to let things be hard so that we can create what that reward is on the other side. It's worth it to go through the hard to get to the end result we want. And today we're going to talk about 10 key areas that I've been thinking about a lot recently. 10 areas that I have experienced for myself and that I've been coaching on a lot with clients about when is it worth letting it be hard? When do we lean into the challenge, into the obstacle, into that feeling of discomfort? When is it worth it? So today we're going to talk about 10 key areas where I think it's worth it. Now, I also want to say that I know you listeners, and I know how easy it is to sometimes use information like this, especially this specific type of episode, against ourselves. So as you are listening, please remember that in this podcast, you are only ever allowed to use the things for you. You are never allowed, no permission granted here from Paula Engebretson, to use what I share in this podcast against yourself at any time. And so as I share these 10 areas where it's worth allowing the things to be hard, as I share these 10 areas, notice how they land in your body. Notice how your mind responds. Notice your nervous system, okay? Because if you hear something and you can feel an opening or this, yes, that makes so much sense. If you can feel your body open to it, Amazing. Use that for you. But if you hear me share something and you feel shame, or it makes you close down, or it makes you feel bad about yourself, this is not one that is for you. Okay? It is not for this season, because these 10, when I say them for myself in my current season, they feel super supportive. They help me grow into the person I want to be. But I can go through these and I can find times where they were not supportive for me. Okay, so please, as you're listening, don't take them as truths with a capital T. They are truths for me right now, but don't take them as truths for you with a capital T. Take them and notice how your body responds. And if they feel supportive, if they feel grounding, if they feel like a helpful way to guide you in your decisions or how you show up in whatever situation you're navigating, then use it. But if it feels unsupportive or you feel any kind of shame or anything like that, it's not there for you. Okay? So I want to offer that disclaimer ahead of time, because as always, what I offer here is only meant to be used as a support for your amazing brain. Deal? Okay. So let's dive in. Let's talk about these 10 areas where I think it's worth leaning in, allowing the discomfort, letting it be hard, so you can experience the growth and the huge gains on the other side. And the first area that I want to talk about is making decisions. Okay? Making decisions is hard. It is hard, and you have to feel uncomfortable a lot of the time, especially if it's something that you're not practiced in doing. Making decisions can feel confusing. You might feel overwhelmed. You might worry that you're going to make the wrong decision and that you might feel regret or frustration on the other side if you choose the quote unquote wrong thing. So yeah, making decisions is hard, and it's often much easier to just push off the decision, right? I've certainly been there many times where it's so much easier to go, I'll think about that later. I can't deal with that right now. And again, sometimes that's true. Sometimes it's past our capacity and we don't have the space for it. This is a very nuanced episode, so listen in a way that feels supportive for you, okay? But there are also times when we're pushing off decisions because we just don't want to be in the discomfort of having to decide. However, when we are willing to be uncomfortable, when we are willing to lean in and make the decision, and we are willing to consider, yeah, I might make the quote unquote wrong decision and I might feel disappointed, but also when I'm willing to make the decision, I'm able to move forward. Because the truth is that when we make decisions, that's when we get to actually live our lives. If we don't make decisions, frankly, we're making a decision anyway, right? To not decide is a decision. To not decide is to stay with the status quo. Okay, so that is actually a decision in and of itself. And that's okay. But let's even decide intentionally. Look, I don't want to change what I'm doing right now. I am deciding to keep it the same. I'm deciding not to do the thing. I'm deciding not to go. I'm deciding not to join the club or whatever. Okay? But let's make those decisions intentionally. Because when we make decisions, when we're willing to lean in to the discomfort and consider all those worst case scenarios and figuring out what you would do and what your qualifiers are for making the decisions and leaning in and making it, you get to move forward so much faster. When you don't make decisions, you're making the decision to let life happen to you. And then we're living in reactive mode and we're having to just react to everything all the time. But when we're willing to be uncomfortable for that short amount of time as we gather the data, gather the criteria that we need to make the decision, and we make the decision, then we're able to move forward with intention, knowing that we chose the thing that we wanted and we're living into it. I am telling you, not only is this so much quicker and more efficient in how we move through our day-to-day, but it also gets you to the results that you want so much faster. Because you have data to work with that you can learn and grow and adjust. One of my coaches, Karen Gillan, she often talks about the fact that our life happens at the speed of our decision making. And I think she's spot on. When we're able to make decisions and step out of the confusion and the spinning, that's when we're able to move forward and start living that life that we're making decisions around. So for example, I noticed myself last night in some indecision about when I'm going to go visit a friend of mine and which hotel or Airbnb I'm going to stay in. Okay, so they're not huge decisions, but they're still decisions. And some of you know, I have a lot of thoughts around travel and everything that's involved with it. So for me, it was a lot of potential decision making and a space where I could easily slip into indecision. So I knew, okay, this is one of those traps for me. I need to get really clear on what my criteria is, and I'm going to pick a time, a container of when I'm going to make this decision, because life happens at the speed of my decisions. And the sooner I make my decisions, the sooner I can make that plan for when I'm going to go visit her and what we're going to do and how I can support her as she needs it. Okay? So area number 1, making decisions. Yes, it's uncomfortable to make decisions, but I promise you in the long run, it is so much more uncomfortable to push them off and have to deal with life happening to you. All right, let's look at number 2. So number 2 actually kind of builds on number 1, which is the topic of decluttering. Okay, decluttering is hard. For many of us, it can feel very challenging. Why? Because it is a bunch of decisions. It is so many decisions over and over and over. In fact, I heard somebody say once that clutter is basically a bunch of unmade decisions. It's stuff that we haven't decided what we want to do with. Okay? So yes, decluttering, getting rid of stuff, deciding what you're going to do with it, deciding how much you need and where it's going to go and whether you want to donate it and whether it's in good quality and all of that to donate, and or whether you want to sell it or what you want to, all of that. So many decisions. It is hard. It is especially hard and especially taxing for an ADHD brain who struggles with executive functioning, right? Making those decisions is extra challenging. It's so much easier to stack it, if you're like me, stack it into a pile so it looks neat and tell myself I'll deal with it later. But again, that's just a pile then of unmade decisions about what I want to do with all this stupid mail that keeps coming. So it's stacks of unmade decisions. Or we shove stuff in our closets or in our drawers. We leave hair products in the bathroom because even though we hate how they work, there's still some left and we feel bad about getting rid of it, whatever. All of these unmade decisions. And it's easier to just close the drawer and shut the thing and save it for later. But then we have so many decisions that we have to make later. What's more, we have so much stuff. We're living in overstimulation. We're living in visual distraction. There is so much that we have to deal with, which is pulling us away from the things that we actually want to focus on. So when we are willing to lean in to the hard thing of making these decisions, of getting rid of this stuff in whichever way we do it, whether we're selling it, whether we're donating it, whether we're throwing it out, recycling it, whatever, when we're willing to do that, we make our lives so much easier on the other side. Because on the other side of decluttering is knowing what you have, where it is, and how to find it with ease. Now, your brain might be going to, but do you mean it has to be minimalist and looking like Pinterest? No, I like stuff. Again, if you're on YouTube, you can see I have stuff on my shelves. I like stuff. However, my stuff has a home. I've made decisions about where my things go, and my home, all the things I have, fit within it. I am not past the capacity of my home. I think what happens is that when we have too much clutter, we're past the capacity of our containers that we're storing things. I might be past the capacity of my closet if I have too many hooded sweatshirts, which may or may not have been one of my obstacles. Okay? When we can make the decisions to help ourselves live within the containers that we have. Just as we talk about with living within the time containers we have, it's also the same with our stuff. Are we living within the containers that we have of our stuff? When we are, it makes things so much easier because we know where things go and they fit with ease. So that is number 2. Decluttering is hard, but when you're willing to lean in and be uncomfortable as you make the decisions, it's so much easier for future you on the other side. So now let's talk about number 3. Which is feeling your feelings. Feeling your feelings can seem incredibly challenging because it's uncomfortable. Nobody wants to sit around and feel their feelings. That feels terrible. It feels way better in the moment to pick up your phone and scroll Instagram or watch YouTube shorts. It feels so much better to open up a bottle of wine and start drinking so that you don't have to feel all the feelings. It's so much easier to go on Amazon and buy stuff you don't need and contribute to the clutter than to feel the feelings. It's so much easier to turn on whatever gaming system you use and go down the rabbit hole of the game you're playing for a couple of hours rather than feeling the feelings. But here's the deal. When we keep pushing away the feelings that arise, with scrolling, gaming, drinking, eating, buying, overworking, whatever the buffers are that we're using, those emotions are still sitting there in the body. And eventually they come up as really intense anxiety or depression, or we explode at random times, have huge emotional outbursts and dysregulation. It can show up as feeling totally numb and flat because we just stopped feeling them altogether. It can show up as chronic illness, chronic pain. It can show up in so many different ways. Now, if you notice that you have really been doing this for a very long time, I would highly encourage you to reach out and connect with a somatic therapist. Okay, so somebody who really works with the body to help you with emotional processing. That could be super supportive if it feels very new. However, if you're someone who has felt feelings sometimes, right? Like you know what it feels like sometimes, and you're not dealing with clinical anxiety or clinical depression, or if you are, but you're already working with a therapist, this is where we want to learn how to pause and open up to actually feeling that feeling of frustration that bubbled up when you couldn't get your tech to work at the presentation for work, right? And rather than opening up your Instagram and scrolling after because you're just so frustrated and flustered because the thing didn't work, instead allowing that and sitting with it and moving through it. Now, I know that most brains, when they hear this at first, and I've talked about this in other episodes, people are like, what? That's going to take forever? Who has time for that? But the thing is, it doesn't take long when we slow down and we allow for it. It's a rather short amount of time. And when we're able to sit with the feeling and let it move through us, on the other side, we have so much more clarity and we feel so much lighter, and we're able to enjoy our lives that much more because we're actually experiencing the life rather than muting it, rather than pushing it away or dulling it down with these different types of buffers. I am telling you, this, above all, is the secret to the universe. When you learn how to allow and sit with and be with your feelings and feel them move through you, that is everything. In fact, my husband is navigating this right now, and I did check with him. He said he doesn't mind sharing, but he is really doing some work on learning how to feel his feelings because, like most of us, he was never taught, right? They don't teach this in school. Or they didn't, at least, when we were in school. And so he was talking with me just this morning and was feeling kind of anxious and stressed, and his mind was racing. And then he got quiet and he was just kind of sitting at the kitchen island. I was getting my breakfast ready. And he was just sitting there. And then I looked at him and I said, "What's up?" And he goes, "I don't know. I'm kind of confused. I was like so anxious and stressed and feeling really worried. And then I was pausing to reflect on it. And now it's gone. And I don't really know why I was so worried." And I said, "That's amazing. Welcome to feeling your feelings. It feels terrible at first, but when you're willing to sit with it, it moves through. And then you feel the clarity on the other side and you can go, oh, I can see how most of this I did not need to be super anxious or stressed or worried about. This thing over here, I might want to solve for that. I might want to create a solution. But this morning with Ryan, it was such a beautiful example of, I thought that having to sit with this would mean hours and hours of turmoil. No, it was maybe a couple of minutes. By the time I was done making my omelet, he was fine. So when we can allow ourselves to open up to that feeling and sit with it and learn from it, we have so much more clarity on the other side. And it's so much faster than pushing away our feelings for days, weeks, months, years, decades of our lives. I promise you, it's a secret to the universe. And it was buried in tip 3. Okay. Number 4, saying no. Here's the deal. Saying no can seem incredibly hard because, again, our brain goes wild thinking about all of the things. We're going to disappoint people. They're going to be upset. They're not going to ask us to do the thing again. And we might feel FOMO and we're worried that we're going to miss out. And if we have to say no to ourselves, then we have to feel disappointed. And the rebel part of us might come out and say, you can't tell me what to do. And the toddler brain throws a fit, right? Having to say no to ourselves or others does not feel easy in the moment. In fact, it can feel quite challenging. And it is so much easier to just say yes. Yes, I'm happy to do the thing. Yes, I'm happy to bake the cupcakes. Yes, I am happy to take on those extra meetings. I'm happy to lead them. Yes, I'm happy to create those slides. Yes, 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 yes. And then it's really hard on the other side when it's time to do the thing and we realize how much we've overcommitted. And we've said yes to a bunch of things that are not full body yeses. They are not even half body yeses. They are all complete shoulds. And we're doing them because we think we should, and we didn't want to feel uncomfortable saying no. So now we just have to be uncomfortable to do the thing. So rather than being uncomfortable in the moment for that 30 seconds of saying, thank you so much for offering, but I can't. Have you considered asking so-and-so? Or no, I can't. Thank you for thinking of me. Instead of being in the discomfort for that 30 seconds and saying no with kindness, instead, we say yes in the moment so we can feel the instant relief. But then we have hours, days, weeks worth of work on the other side where we have to be uncomfortable and overcommitted and overtaxed and burning out. Yes, saying no can seem very challenging. And it is worth being uncomfortable and saying no so that you have the capacity to say yes to the things in your life that you genuinely want to say yes to. So you can say yes to the things that you want to with intention, so that you are showing up to your life in the way that you want to, with the energy that you have and the time that you have and your capacity. Saying no is hard, but being uncomfortable and saying it anyway with kindness is everything, because it's so much easier on the other side. All right, building on saying no is telling the truth. So telling the truth can be hard. It can be really hard when we're worried that our truth might upset someone, or they might judge us, or we might disappoint them. It's so much easier to make up a little excuse so that we don't have to tell the actual truth. It's so much easier to say, I would really love to, but shoot, I have a dentist appointment at that time, so I can't do it. Because yes, in the moment, it's easier to just make an excuse. But if you don't want to do the thing, let me tell you from experience, that thing will come back around. The person will say, we'll just do it a different time. How about Thursday instead? Then you have to think of another excuse. That is not easy. When we make these excuses, when we tell these little lies, when we people please by telling other people yes and telling them what we think they want to hear, even though it's not true to us, it may feel easy in the moment, but it's also what leads to disconnection. It's what leads to disconnection with others because, again, we're not actually telling the truth. And it leads to disconnection with ourselves. When we are disconnected from ourselves, we don't know who we are, what we want, how we want to show up. We can't show up in the way that we want to because we're just busy people pleasing and trying to do what everyone else wants. And we completely disconnect from who we are. And this often stems from telling all of these little lies, from not telling the truth about what we want, what our desires are, how we want to spend our time. So yes, telling the truth is hard. It causes us to be uncomfortable and to face uncomfortable situations. And again, the situations themselves are not actually what's uncomfortable. It's because we're thinking that this is really awkward and uncomfortable and we're worrying what other people are thinking. But most of us sit in that when we have to tell the truth and we think the other person isn't going to want to hear it. Yes, it is uncomfortable. But when you tell the truth, it allows for so much greater connection to both yourself and others because you're showing up authentically as who you are, doing what you genuinely want to do from a place of love. And I say telling the truth both to yourself and others because we often don't see when we're not telling ourselves the truth. I know for myself, I used to have all of these ideals of who I thought I should be and what I should want to do and how I should want to show up and that I should love certain activities and love being around certain situations. And I don't. And when I finally allowed myself to see the truth of what was true for me, and I stopped lying to myself about what I think I should want and should like and should do and should be, it was so much freedom on the other side. It was magic on the other side. So yes, telling the truth, it can feel hard, especially in uncomfortable situations. But I'm telling you, it is freedom and connection and authenticity on the other side. And I want to say, as an aside, that telling the truth does not mean you have to be cruel or blunt or say something that you're worried might hurt someone. Okay? That's not what I'm saying. We don't need to be cruel when we're telling the truth. There are so many ways to tell the truth with love and with kindness. Maybe I'll do a whole episode on that. That could possibly be a good one to explore. But how do we tell that whole truth? Because when we tell the truth from a place of love, when we tell the truth of, I am so appreciative that you thought of me and I have to say no now, and I'm actually kind of worried you won't invite me again because I do genuinely want to go, but I'm just past capacity. I'm burnt out right now and I can't say yes, but please ask me again. When you do that from a place of love and truth, you feel so much more authentic. So lean in. It's worth it to be uncomfortable when you tell the truth from a place of love. All right. I am just looking at the clock right now, and I have been talking for a while. This is why we script things, Paula. We have gone through 5. I have 5 more. In next week's episode, we are going to continue with 5 more areas where it's worth leaning in to the discomfort because it's so much easier on the other side. I am not going to continue with another 5 because this would be a very long episode. So stay tuned. Be sure to hit the little subscribe button in the top of your podcast player wherever you're listening, or the follow button on YouTube if you're following along there, and you won't miss it. What will it be? Episode 254 will be next week's episode. So be sure to check back for the next 5 areas in my top 10 list of when it's worth it to lean in and do the hard thing so you can enjoy that life of greater ease and love and joy on the other side. And of course, if you want support in any of these areas, I would love to help you. I work with clients both one-on-one and in my small group coaching program, We're Busy Being Awesome. You can learn about both through the link in the show notes. So if there are areas where you're thinking, I could benefit from leaning in a little bit, I think I could benefit from getting some support to lean into these areas that feel hard, because I know on the other side, it will be so much easier. I've got you. So go to the link in the show notes. You can learn more both about the group We're Busy Being Awesome and one-on-one coaching with me. All right, my friends, that's going to do it for us this week. And if you know somebody who would love to learn more about when it's worth it to lean in and do the hard thing, would you be a rock star and share this episode with them? You can send it in a message, share it on your Instagram stories, whatever you do. Please know I appreciate it so much because you are doing a huge part in helping get these tools to other busy, awesome brains who need it. Also, if you're ready to learn how to lock in your routines and make them stick, be sure to sign up for my free course called the ADHD Routine Revamp. You can tap through the link in the show notes. You'll see the link right there where you can sign up and start making your routines work for you. Until next time, keep being awesome. I'll talk with you soon.